If you're someone who is interested in improving workplace culture and upping the ante on diversity, equity, inclusion, and moving the needle with having thought-provoking questions to actually make a change and stand up, this next interview is for you. And Denise Hamilton is on fire. Personally, I think she'd make a good president, but that is certainly not her next move. She's a nationally recognized workplace culture expert. She's the founder and CEO of WatchHerWork, a digital learning platform for professional women, and an all-hands group, a workplace culture consultancy firm. An in-demand speaker and facilitator, she has consulted for dozens of Fortune 500 companies, including GE, Apple, IBM, Shell, BP, Meta, and more. Her thought leadership has been featured in the Harvard Business Review, Morning Joe, Fox, Bloomberg, and Newsweek. She is a regular contributor to MIT Sloan Management Review, and her first book, which is incredible, Indivisible, is now available for you to grab. Enjoy my chat with Denise. All right, my powerhouses. So I have Denise Hamilton here. And if you have not heard her name yet, you will, believe me, she's on fire. However, she is also here with us today and going to share some really cool shit. And we're also going to talk about a topic that we really haven't touched a whole lot on this show. So I'm also super excited about that because, Denise, you have a really cool take on some things that I think have been taboo, popular to talk about. But what you say in your articles is brilliant. So welcome, Denise.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm thrilled to be here with you.
Yeah, and I would love, just if you could give a little bit of an overview of how you got into being an expert in your field and talking about what you do and just a little bit of your story, because this is not really something that someone just wakes up one day and is like, yeah, I'm going to do this, right?
Yeah. Well, I was an executive for about 25 years. In some of the most challenging industries, right? And I was the only woman, the first woman or Black person in almost every job I've ever had. And I learned some lessons in that time, right? Of how to navigate different cultures and how to be a leader and how to be effective in building relationships. And so it kind of came to a space that everybody wanted to pick my brain. I could have gone to lunch 15 times a day, really, because everybody wanted to have the cheat code of how can you be successful in these male-dominated spaces. And so after I left corporate and launched my own company, I thought, we'd have to share these lessons on a broader scale. So I launched WatchHerWork, where I curated women's advice, their wisdom, in a place so other women could access it when they wanted to use it. How do you ask for a raise? How do you tell your boss you're pregnant? What do you do if a client hits on you? So I started kind of collecting all of these videos of that advice. And through that work, I became a really sought after speaker to come and speak to women's groups within organizations. And then that expanded for this reason, because it's wonderful to go into an organization and tell the women, you can do it, you can reach these higher goals, you can achieve. But at some point, I had to ask myself, is that true? And I shifted to leaders of I can tell people and motivate them all day long, but are you as leaders creating a space where people really have the opportunity to shine and to grow and to develop? And so my work kind of grew to be working with leaders and developing customized trainings and customized communication around how they can really lead diverse organizations. And so not just around gender, but around race, about religion, about just any difference. I, quite frankly, work at the people side of change. And so whether that's remote work or AI or DEIB, it's really all the same. how are people moving through these systems, and how can we make sure that we are optimizing and always considering the people as we consider the profits?
I love that so much. And I love the fact that you recognize, like, wait a minute, am I making the biggest impact that I can with my gifts, right? And taking it to the top, because, and that's, I'm huge. Like, that is our entire ethos, is like, okay, let's stop talking about the statistic. Let's do the thing that creates the change, right? Enough organizations talk about the stats. We don't need any more of that. We need change.
We're overrun with stats. We're overrun with stats.
Yes. God, the nails on a chalkboard. Like, yeah, I know the fucking numbers. Let's change them, right? So good on you for doing that and starting and talking to the leadership, because, and as leaders too, like, we don't know what we don't know sometimes. And, and I've even found that in my journey and in very small organizations, like, no one teaches you how to be an effective leader. We model what we know and see, and then it's up to us to how receptive we want to be to being effective, especially hopefully having a very diverse organization, right? Because the more diversity that you have, the more powerful you become by being more appealing to, number one, the world, the people that you're serving. But my God, like, the difference of opinions and experiences and having that in itself, I personally think creates a powerhouse. But dealing and leading all of those different cultures, thought processes, people, and how they interact with each other is a whole nother challenge, right? And so, what have you found? And I would love to hear, this is probably gonna be like 10 questions in one, so I apologize. I have a strange knack for doing that. But first, like, how have you come up with these like diamonds, right? So what have you experienced as like, yep, this is a critical thing that has helped me be successful? And then what are things that you're seeing in organizations that are simple conversions, right? Like, I think we overcomplicate a lot of things, but sometimes it's small little tweaks that we need to do that are so overlooked and undervalued.
Oh my gosh, yes, that's a lot of questions in one question.
I know, I told you, I'm sorry.
No, I totally get it. So I think it's really you hit the nail on the head for something you said. We have to shrink the problem. Like, you cannot boil the ocean. You are not in charge of negotiating a war in another country. You are not in charge of the entire political landscape. You run your team and your company, right? Like we have to shrink the problem. What is in your purview? What is in your sphere of influence? And I actually think this is one of the biggest crises of our time. Honest with you, people are so discouraged by the size and the scale of the problem that they end up doing nothing, right? And really, I don't need you to be an expert at the entire world. I need you to do the 5 feet that are around you. That's it. Let's just start there. This is the 5 feet around you. If the world was a big stadium, and, each one of us dropped a couple pieces of paper, trash on the floor, that stadium is wrecked. But what if each one of us bends down and picks up the stuff just around our feet? It's an entirely different experience. So one of the biggest challenges that we have is making sure we have an appropriate response to the appropriate scale of the appropriate reach that each one of us has to create change. We are overrun with helplessness and hopelessness. It is really unacceptable. Here we have people that are better educated, better resourced, more information. You have more of everything. How dare we walk through the world helpless and hopeless, like waiting for someone to come and save us? Like, no one else is coming. So if we could just access our power in that way and just activate our power, I just think we would be so much more effective. Where is the Mothers Against Drug Driving energy? Do you remember that group?
What happened to that? Yes.
And they just changed things. Like, what has changed to the extent that we don't feel capable and powerful anymore? I think that people are afraid to make mistakes, right? And I don't know any great thing that you do without being willing to make a mistake. I've never seen anything that works
Yeah.
out. So we've got to push through
Mhm.
our comfort, our security. We've got to take the risk. But you know what makes that less of a risk? Actual relationship. We have way too many important conversations with strangers. Maybe TikTok or Twitter is not the place to discuss these deep topics. I don't know. It's just a thought, just an
Yeah.
idea, right? And I have friends from all different walks of life. And I'll tell you, one of the blessings of my life is if I don't understand something, I can just pick up the phone and I can call my friend that's Jewish, or I can call my friend that is transgender, or I can call my friend that is a white male and I can say, how do you feel about this? What do you think about that? So I don't have to deal with their avatar or the caricature of them. I have actual friends that I can have these conversations with. Some of our conversations require a foundation, a connection that I know you care about me. That's going to make any conversation better. Instead, we have a bunch of arguments with random people all the time, which charges up the issues and charges up the conflict. So one of the things I coach leaders to do is make sure you know your people. Make sure you have a relationship so that it creates just that little bit of a delay before someone goes 0 to 60. Maybe they go to 0 to 10 and they say, hey, what did you mean by that? Instead of blowing up and exploding. So I think we need to really be more thoughtful about where conversations happen and who they happen with, and make sure we've created a real foundation to have high quality conversations, even if they're conflictual, that they can be a high quality conversation because they're built on a foundation of connection.
100%. Yes. Like, we've lost the ability to have these collaborative, constructive conversations. Like, you can love someone and respect someone and disagree with someone. Like, that is okay. And we've almost lost this ability to have courage and to speak up and to think for ourselves independently while also accepting other ideals. And, it's really taking this like extreme ability to take back accountability. Right. I think that as a society, and this is, of course, is not everybody, but it certainly seems like the masses, is that we have gotten comfortable with just playing the victim. And no one likes to hear that because it sounds negative. Oh, I'm not a victim. I'm not a martyr. Yes, you are. Right. If you are complaining about something and not taking action on it, when you have the power to do so, you're probably being a victim versus taking ownership and accountability and finding that courage. And I think courage is more appropriate than confidence, because nowadays, too, to your point, we don't want to fail. We don't want to make a mistake because, again, it feels like, oh my God, I'm going to get canceled, right? Which of course comes to those relationships and being able to have relationships that are off of Twitter, well, in person, in human, real life context. It's so huge and so significant. So I love all of those points that you made. And it actually kind of brings me to an article that you wrote that, and as I was reading it, I was like, yep, 100%. I talk about this all the time, right? Like really being able to dig deeper too. And on that, like accountability part, you wrote an article on personal freedom, right? And how to really think about shifting your mindset and taking assessment of that. Because again, living in one of the best countries, United States, no offense to everybody else, not in America, but we do. And we have access to everything. And are we taking ownership in that or being complacent? So I'd love for you to just chat a little bit about that, Denise. And of course, everything we talk about, by the way, fam, that is in this podcast will be in the show notes. But if you could talk about that, because that, if you really think about it, is pure power. Pure power for the ability for us to take some ownership in that. And we forget because we get busy, we get routine, and sometimes we're just depressed, right?
Yeah. And I think also we get really comfortable.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I think that this idea of access of seeing yourself as a powerful being, right? What does that mean? It doesn't mean that the world is perfect. It doesn't mean that you're going to be operating in toxic positivity. It doesn't mean that all the conditions are ideal. It means that you are personally empowered to do what you can with what you have in the context that you're in. One of my personal muses is Harriet Tubman. And so here is this woman in the 1800s, enslaved. She could not read. She could not write. She had a disability. She had been brutalized as a child and she had a seizure disorder. She didn't have a map. She didn't have a horse. She didn't know anybody in the North. And this woman runs by herself from the South to the North for her freedom. If we stop the story right there, it would be phenomenal. But she turns around and she goes back. She gets 3 people. Then the next time she gets 4 people. The next time she gets 5 people. Like a few people at a time, every single time. Over the course of her life, it's thought that it's estimated that she saved about 70 people, right? And now, why is she my muse? Do any of us have less than Harriet Tubman had in the 1800s? No, we don't have less information. We don't have less resources. We don't have less power. What we do have less of is less courage, less consistency, less competence. Like, we need to believe in our ability to create change in whatever stage or context we are operating in. Period. End of discussion. Literally, this woman said the whole world was against her. She was literally illegal. Everything that she was doing was illegal. She was hunted for saving people's lives, right? And she did it anyway. Can you handle a tough conversation? I think you can. Can you listen and learn and challenge previously held beliefs? I think you can. Can you release some stories that no longer serve you? I believe you can, right? Like, because we have all of these examples of people who stepped into their power, even under the most difficult, challenging situations in the world. And so for me, I count it as a privilege, a responsibility, to do my best. And what is my best? My best is not oh my gosh, what are we going to do? Wringing my hands and being in panic. My best is, where is the place that I can tap in? Where is the place that I'm going to work? And to be honest, we're at a disadvantage, right? We're being kind of force-fed helplessness. We're being force-fed anger. And honestly, we get more points. If we look at our entertainment, our media right now, you get more points for staying entrenched in your position and beating up on the other guy than you do from compromises and finding solutions. It shouldn't be like that, but that's really what we have. So when we need more people to model solutions and compromise and taking a step forward and taking another step forward and taking another step forward. We need some of that Harriet Tubman energy of get 3, then get 5, then 4. And that's how you're going to make progress, right? And so this idea of celebrating anger, hostility, difference, dissonance, like having that be the currency of our time, that's what we've got to put down. One of my least favorite things that we do in our society right now is a culture of humiliation. I hate it. We go to a college campus, we find a little girl with blue hair and a nose ring, and we stick a mic in her face and she says something silly and we say, ha, 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 isn't she stupid? And then we go to a Trump rally and we find the most, wildly dressed person and we stick a mic in their face and they say something silly and we say, ha, 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 look how stupid these people are. I have never seen anyone come to your position because you humiliated them. I've never seen that work before. So we have to decide that if you say you love America, you probably need to try to love Americans. And we're going to have to try to find a way to connect to each other, to respect each other, and not to laugh and humiliate each other. And we're all guilty of this. There's not a person that's not guilty of it. But I just thought one small act of resistance is just don't forward that meme. Just don't interact with it. Let's vote. Let's vote for each other with our clicks and our likes and let's be careful about what we're feeding ourselves, what we're taking into our consciousness. We have made the people who sit at the other end of the boat we're in enemies. Honey, if there's a hole in their end of the boat, we're all drowning. We cannot have holes in our boat. We are in the same boat. We're on the same rock, and we have to figure out how to deal with each other and how to respect each other and how to interact with each other in a way that creates solutions. I want my students to be able to read. I want bridges not to fall down. We have so many things that we agree on. And quite frankly, those things are going unaddressed because more energy is focused on fighting. So when we think about like the challenges that are facing us, right? How do I shrink the problem and focus on the things that I can do, the kindnesses that I can enact, the places that I can plug in and be really impactful? And am I intentionally looking for those places? And am I resisting the diet of toxicity and anger and frustration? It just doesn't feed you. It just makes us all a little bit unhinged.
Unhinged. I have been saying for like the last 4 years to like everybody that I'm close enough with to say this is like, the world is becoming unhinged. Like all of the things that I am seeing here, it's like, what happened? And to your exact point, which by the way, like I think I have found like my soul sister, like everything you're saying is like coming direct from my heart. Like can you run for president, please? But it's like we have just acquiesced to staying in this little comfort box of bullshit and not questioning anything. And to your point, like, do you even love America or Americans? I don't think so. And the current like media and leadership is not helping you love each other, right? And it's following what's popular and what gets clicks, but not what's fact. Or are we even understand? Are we asking questions? And that's so terrifying. Like we're better than that. We have information. We're not using it. We can do better. We need to do better. And there's just so much to that. And even looking at what did our ancestors do? How did they do it? And what the hell happened to our ability to just work hard towards something we're passionate about? Have you read the book, The Comfort Crisis?
I haven't. Tell me about it.
You will love it because it was a lot of what you just talked about, but it's essentially saying like, we are now in a world where everybody is just comfortable, right? Humans weren't made to just be in 70 degrees 24/7, right? And be comfortable and go to our cushy little job and come home. And like, we have removed almost all of the actual challenges from what we used to be exposed to, of which, who has heard the term snowflake, right? Has turned many of us and our children, right? Because he's talking like, screw, like, I think he said, there's no more helicopter parents. It's like the, I can't remember the term he used, but snowplow parents, removing all conflict, all barrier. So like we're not only adverse to any conflict ourselves in speaking up, now we're teaching our kids to not be able to deal with conflict, which means your kids saying they're staying home from school because of anxiety in middle school. Did you know what anxiety was in middle school? Like, what? Oh, yeah, and then, okay, Harriet Tubman, do you think that woman had some anxiety? And she persevered, though. That's for sure. She said, yeah, I've got this. I'm scared. Fuck it. I'm doing it anyways because I'm standing up for what I believe in. And to me, that's powerful. That's in my heart and I'm letting it out and I'm talking about it. And so come along with me, right? And I think when you're bold and when you do that and talk about all the things, Denise, that you're saying, like doing what you can in your power, picking up the trash in front of your feet, right? When you do that, when you speak up, when you have these collaborative conversations with love, it doesn't mean you have to agree on it. Like, you're giving permission for the next person to do the same thing. It's contagious.
I absolutely think that's true. And I think like we have, like in my book, I talk about this idea of we need to learn how to disagree without destruction, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Ability to disagree. I have friends that I can have knocked down, drag out, like disagreements, and then we go grab some nachos and Cheetos, right? With no problem, issue, no challenge, because we are talking about ideas, not personal character, not personal behavior. And so how do we get to that space that we can discuss ideas that we disagree about and find the ways to safely interrogate the ideas, right? And that's not what we see. To be honest, the like defining thing about 24-hour news is that by design, it's this side versus that side. Imagine the ridiculousness of trying to reduce the entire world to two sides. Stop. That doesn't make any sense. Like, that's not how any of this works, right? And so how do you kind of decolonize your thinking and really just say, okay, what is my thought on this issue? First question, do I know anything about this issue? Have I done any research? Do I have any information? Where did my information come from? Is it correct? Is it accurate? Is it outdated? Right? My husband wanted to do a project. He wanted to, we saw a piece of furniture and he was like, gosh, that would be beautiful if you could strip it and paint it like some crazy color, like it'd be amazing. And I said, well, why don't you do that? He said, stripping furniture, it takes so hard, it's so long and it takes so many this and that. I said, not anymore. They have all these products now. You just spray it on and it comes right off. He was like, really? And I thought that was such an important like parallel to what we have right now. We have so many outdated ideas. Some ideas that we have.
So interesting. Yeah.
We've not explored in a really long time. We have assumptions. We have broken stories, incomplete stories. Do we have the courage to stop and say, I don't know if my story is true. I'm not 100% sure that how I'm thinking about this is the right way. And do we allow people to say that? Do we allow people to raise their hands and say, I don't know. I don't know. No, we push. Everybody feels like they have to comment on everything, even though they can't find that place on a map. They've never read a single study about this problem. They don't know anything about this topic. So I think the idea, like this first step, this humility that you need to bring to any one of these conversations is so important. Hey, I would love to be wrong. I have this negative perception of this group, or I have this negative idea of how this problem can be solved. And I would love for you to give me some information that's going to make me feel better about that. What if that's how we approach these conversations instead of me against you, us against them, my side, right, wrong, up, down? It's like, that is just a silly frame. We are teammates, not opponents. We need great things to happen. We need great things to happen for each other, right? So that we can thrive and we can compete and we can be a successful nation. I travel a lot. I've got my new book that's out, and I've been in the world called Indivisible, and I'm in the world traveling a great deal into a lot of different cities. And every time I go to a different city, I visit the homeless camps. And I drive through because I ask them to drive me through and let me see, because I'm seeing these camps grow and grow and grow, grow. And I think there are tons of problems that we have as a society, but we have some real problems that we need to be working on that do not get the energy that other people
don't even touch because they're so consumed with shit.
Yeah. Because it gets more energy, and because it's differentiating. We're so busy differentiating between the parties that we're not solving any problems, right?
100%.
Our Congress is the least productive of any Congress in human history. How is that possible when we have more tools than we've ever had in human history? So I think there's this energy of humility that we have to inject into this season. And we have to understand that there are people who are rage farming us, who literally monetize our anger, our hopelessness, our frustration, our anxiety, our depression. They don't care about us. And so that means we have to care. We have to set the boundaries. We have to engage in actual human relationships and actual human connections. We have to check ourselves and our beliefs and the stories. Are we spreading misinformation? Do we know if something is true before we hit forward or we hit post? I don't always think we do. So it's not great. I wish that the media and definitely social media was held more accountable, but they're not. So that means, like I said, no one else is coming. That means
we have to do it.
Responsible.
That's right.
Of our children in terms of what they're exposed to. I don't want my attention span to be that of a flea. I don't want my brain science to change to the point that I perceive every problem as an either or. I don't want that. So what am I doing to stay truly open? Because if you can't be, move, act in ways that are truly open, I don't think you're free. And what was all of this for if we're not actually free?
Yeah. So good. And it's like, I think it comes to two like big things there too. It's like, are you immediately saying I can't, or is it I won't? Right. And again, if you aren't happy with what you're seeing in leadership and seeing the most ineffective Congress that we have had, are you actually following the same traits? Or are you willing to change that narrative? It's wild how much we don't actually articulate that narrative of what's existed and what's happened. And so, it's so important to truly understand what it means to be your best advocate for yourself, the people you love. And to your point, like, no one's coming to save us. You think like, Father Government's going to fix everything without you speaking up and taking action on things that are important or changing the narrative and not letting them like play you like a puppet. Like, yeah, we have to talk about this stuff and come together as humans, because we need to live on this earth together, hopefully better for it, and deal with these root causes. And, and another thing too that I'll say, and I was just talking about this the other day, is like, if you are surrounded by people who think like you, who never challenge you, or who always just say yes and agree with you, you are in real trouble. You are in real trouble. You want people in your circle, in your corner, in your pocket that you can have those like bloodbath disagreements with and then go have drinks afterwards, right? Like, I constantly try to make sure I'm surrounded with people who don't agree with me all the time, because to me, the most terrifying place to live in is one where I'm never being challenged. And I don't mean from like just an intellectual growing my business or fitness. Like, I am talking about viewpoint, perspective, ways of thinking, life, being, like all of these things is so important. And, it's something that I started practicing a long time ago is if I disagree with somebody and let's say it's a political stance, right? I will read their biography. I will read their story, because for me, I want to seek to understand, like, how did they come to those conclusions, and what don't I know? What am I missing, right? And for me, it's helped so much gain perspective. It doesn't mean the ending ends in me agreeing, but it ends in more respect, right? It ends in a deeper understanding that I didn't have before. Because again, like, we are all diverse. We've grown up differently. We've been told different things. And so don't you think we owe it to each other to just do more of that?
Yeah, I do. I think one of the problems that we have with that, though, is we have so much hate speech, right?
Yeah.
There's speech, there's disagreement, there's agreement. And it used to be agreement, disagreement, hate speech. Now it's hate speech, disagreement, agreement. And so how do we turn off the triggers, the dopamine hits and the like are that dominate our culture and our communication right now, so that it can really be about ideas. I think we should pay for a school lunch for elementary school. Well, I don't think we should pay for it. And let's talk about those ideas.
Yeah.
But now the conversation is, name calling, and these people are animals, and these people that it's so different, right? And so how do we turn down that portion of the discourse, or at least not let it drive how we interact with each other?
Yeah.
I think that people, I literally just had this conversation with a friend that just came back from a huge conference, and they held up a conversation between two opposing sides. And it was very peaceful and very, I love you, I care about you too, I want you. It was very peaceful. It was a beautiful conversation, but it wasn't modeling conflict, right?
Yeah.
So that's the other end of the spectrum.
Little surface.
Everyone had to get along with everyone else, and we have to tolerate all the bad behavior. That's not right either. There's something in the middle. We can disagree without destruction. There can be quality conversations around difference. And I think when we do that, we have so many examples of that. When we do that, we get a outcome. I'll give you an example. I grew up in Brooklyn, New York. So gun control, gun violence, very important issue for me personally. Danger, it was a threat for my life, my entire growing up life, right? I met a friend in college from Wyoming. The police are an hour and 45 minutes from her house. If something happens on her property, no one's going to get there in time.
Yeah.
I have a story about guns. She has a story about guns. We have a choice. We could argue my side, your side, my side, your side, or we can say, guess what? Both of these stories are true. Let's figure out a way to expand both of our stories. And maybe from that, we can come up with solutions that would actually improve the situation. That's the only way forward. I don't really know how to do it any other way. There's just so much energy. I believe that energy is finite. And we spend so much energy on differences of opinion that literally have no end in sight. They're just no end in sight. And we overlook opportunity to actually make progress. I've seen it in politics. I've seen it in media. And I've definitely seen it in the boardrooms that I go into and the conversations I have. Because that's the problem.
So, and I agree with you 1000%. It's absolutely what I talk about all the time. You're talking about it as a career in making a massive impact in doing this, Denise. So what are some of your ideas, like for feet on the street? Because you're one person, right? As far as having more of these conversations. And one of the things actually, as you're talking about that, I'm like, in EO Entrepreneurs Organization, I don't know if you're familiar, one of the things that they do is a dinner called Breaking Barriers. And it is a topic that is absolutely a hot topic where there should be disagreements, right? And it is the idea of bringing diverse leaders together, all of us, but limiting to like eight people, very small, so that you can actually have a real conversation and focusing that dinner on that one topic and just having a roundtable about it, pros, cons, disagreement, and like coming to terms of that to try to, again, find better solutions, but then to take that better conversation back and expand on it with then who we know. And so in my small little corner over here, like those are some of the things that we are thinking about rolling out in our organization over the next year as part of EO. I'm on the leadership team for that and our chapter. What do you suggest for everybody else? Like, what are some of the things that you're talking about? Like, hey, do this. This is a good idea. To have more of these conversations that my guess is really shouldn't be occurring on social media, because that is stoking the fire, right? So I'd love for you to share what that is, because the women who are listening are leaders, they're action takers, they're people who give a shit and want to make change. But sometimes we all just need to know, like, what's the best way to get started, right?
I think first and foremost, check your circle.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have diverse people in your friendship circle, right? I don't want people to reach out to me just because George Floyd was murdered. I want people to reach out to me because they care about me as a person. We had a lot of people try to come in hot and go from 0 to 60 in relationship, asking these deep, profound, personal questions of relative strangers. Do you have actual friends in these other groups? And are you cultivating those relationships intentionally? Because by the time there's some crisis or issue or disaster, it's kind of too late, right? It's kind of too late. Obviously we have the conflict between Israel and Hamas, the issue in Gaza. And I was really fortunate that I had people from both communities that I could pick up the phone and I could say, tell me about this. And I have some questions. I don't really understand this. That takes me to point number 2. Do you ask more questions than you make statements? Are you digging for the truth, or are you a keeper of the story? In my book, I talk a lot about stories and their power over us, right? Our stories tell us who the good guy is and who gets to live happily ever after. They structure our lives, but a lot of our stories aren't true. They're not, it's not accurate, right? And so how do you reconcile the stories that you grew up with relative to new information? Do you have a practice of seeking out, validating your current story and seeking out new information to make sure that you have an accurate understanding of a situation? I can't tell you how powerful that would be. The best people I've seen operate in these difficult conversations ask more questions than they make statements, and you get to a bigger, higher understanding. Which takes me to the next one: manage your fear. You're safe, right? You're safe, especially if you are building these conversations on the back of actual relationships. Have the courage to ask the hard questions, to do the research. Do it for yourself. Reach out and connect. There's no other way to get good stuff. Good stuff is hard, but we can do things, right? We sent somebody to the moon in a tin can. That's not even with computers that are not even as sophisticated as the phones we have in our pockets right now. Like, we can do really hard things. And I think we need a little grit. We need a little resilience. We need to toughen up a little bit. Fight like you're fighting for your freedom, your safety, your democracy, your country, because guess what? You are. You really, really are. And I would say, last but not least, like, one of the things I think, especially for women, I think we're very socialized around humility, right? Yeah. Don't brag. I mean, middle school, the worst thing you could do is brag. She's so full of herself. We would talk about people that were brag. But I got to tell you, I would want to challenge every single woman that's listening to this podcast. Name your genius. Name your gift. What is the superpower that rests within you? And then think about the ways you are going to activate that superpower to create a better community, a better city, a better country. I think that's how this all works. So it starts with part of that hopelessness and helplessness thing is, what can I do? What can I do? The worst thing you could say is, what can I do? Something. My next book, I think I'm going to call it Do Something. Like, thing, no matter how big, no matter how small, but take ownership of this. This is generation's turn to write the next chapter of the American story. Yeah. What's it gonna say? We need more women at the table with their pens in hand to write the story. Because if you're not writing the story, somebody else is writing it about you, right? So let's create our own narratives, our own directives of what we want this whole experiment to look like. And I want to get to a point, I still see a lot of first woman to do this, first Black person to do this, a lot of firsts. I can't wait till we don't have any more firsts, where we're like, like braided into these cultures, really being successful, and we're sharing our giftedness, and we're just accomplishing and achieving. Like, and what do I have to do? What do you have to do to get us closer to that goal? So those are a few things that I think we need to be thinking about.
Love it. And thank you. And everybody that is listening should have absolutely been writing those down. Even if you're practicing some of them, they're solid reminders, but more importantly, they're solid action items to take back to your teams, to take back to your organization, to take back to your friends, and start sharing that and sharing this podcast and Denise, because these are the needle movers, guys. Like, we are all here to make a massive impact. Let's actually do it. Do the damn thing. We can do hard things 1,000% and make an impact. And Denise has a best-selling book talking about a lot of these things. Indivisible. You must get it. If you are like me, you can listen to it on Audible, so no excuses. And I want to read this quote by Adam Grant, because I think this is probably a wonderful way to not only explain who you are as a person and what you talk about, but like a reason to just get the damn book. So in a world dominated by division, and especially now, this book is a force for unity. Denise Hamilton never fails to make me stop and think. She's a master of injecting complexity into oversimplified issues and shifting the diversity and inclusion conversation from outrage to insight. So that shift, you guys, Indivisible is an extremely powerful, surprisingly practical read. And that was from Adam Grant, who is also a New York Times best-selling author. He has written brilliant books as well. So thank you, Denise. This has been a phenomenal conversation. I am a fan. I loved everything that you had to say, and I need you to get your voice in so many more places, because everyone needs to hear what you have to say. So thank you.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much. I think there's no greater gift than the gift of your attention. And so I always appreciate when somebody invites me into their space and lets me take up a little corner. So thank you so much for having me. And thanks to everyone that listened.
My pleasure. And until next time, my powerhouses, continue to be courageous.